winner at the end of this webinar. So Dirk, if there's a question that really stands out to you, then we will award your book to that person who asked the question. So yeah, thank you everyone. And thank you, Veronica. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Dirk. And enjoy the webinar. So over to you all.
Great, Debs, thank you very much. And Dirk, please no pressure if you don't feel comfortable with choosing a lucky person for your book. Then I'll make a decision. But if you do feel that one or two of the questions were challenging or interesting, we'd love to hear from you. And we certainly know we had an author on last month, and they were right at the end of just before publication, and someone asked a question and said, "Oh shucks, they forgot that in the book." I know it's too late for you, but maybe it's a possibility for an extension or something like that. But Dirk, thank you so much. We've heard so many great things about you from Steve Herberman. He's a really great publisher, and there we go.
That's the size of the book. So I hope we covered everything. It's almost 700 pages, 350 graphics. So it's close to the Dharma book.
Yes,
or even more. So I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
Dirk,
thank you so much.
Please go.
Sorry. Go on, please.
No. I'm happy you can continue now.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the warm welcome here in Dharma, South Africa. I'm really happy to speak here. And again, thank you for your warm words, Howard, Debbie, Veronica, having me with you. The only thing you surprised me is that I will talk a lot about my person. That was not planned yet. So if there are more questions, I can extend it later to this topic if needed. So what do I talk about today? So Howard already said Roland and I published a book 2 weeks ago. So there was the first orders arrived on Amazon. And it's about a fictitious company, which is called Fast Change Co. And Fast Change Co. was founded back in 1888. So I use this a lot in talks and webinars and my trainings to illustrate real situation, but not blaming customers out there. And since it's founded already back in the 19th century, Fast Change Co. is a very big company. A big player worldwide, has several departments, 100,000 of employees, and so on. Whatever you can imagine happens there. And Fast Change Co. had already back in the 90s their first data warehouse, so of the last century, not in 1819. So because Fast Change Co. recognized the potential of data very early at this time. Nowadays, their third data warehouse reached its the end of its life cycle. So what does this mean? It's difficult to extend it anymore. We need a lot of time to change something in the data warehouse. And they ask themselves the question, will Fast Change Co. manage to build a data solution that adapts to change, one that solves and controls the problems with the data in the company, so within Fast Change Co. And one that is fully automatable, because these are all issues they struggle currently with their third data warehouse. So now the short introduction. Hello, everyone in the audience. I'm Dirk Lerner, and welcome you again to today's webinar. I would like to take you on the Fast Change Co.'s journey to a fully flexible and automated data solution. So if you want to know more about myself, we can talk it at the end of the session. So, with that in mind, with the question in mind that Fast Change Co. had, they hired Michael Müller. And Michael Müller, this guy here, comes to fast change co and recognize, oh, wait a minute, so many silos have emerged in the recent years in this company. And he figures out that the reasons for this, for the silos, are more than complex. So the current data warehouse and maybe some of the predecessors often have to cope with high expectations from everyone, not only from business, but mostly from business, to deliver fast results. And causes for these expectations are that Fast Change Co, as I said, it's a big company. They have a diverse, rapidly changing and growing number of sources everywhere. And the data teams do not scale, which does not mean they not doing a good job as a, let's say, data engineer or data modeler, but they are limited to the technology, how they set up the data warehouses. So at the end, the release cycles are too long. They have problems with data historization, just to name a few. And what Michael also figures out is that data is mostly just stuff in fast change code. And with that, also management is aware that things cannot continue this way anymore. So if they would continue this way, so how they handle data in their data warehouses and saying it's just stuff, they sorry, lost the thread. The data is not meaningful enough anymore. So with how they're using it. So it's just there. Yeah. So they want to get more out of their data. They have issues with different reports. The same data items does not mean the same, or if they mean the same, they don't have the same numbers. And they recognize if nothing changes over time, fast change code will sooner or later no longer be competitive if there are other companies. And Michael sees that all these problems need to be solved somehow. Yeah? And he thinks about all this and says, okay, it's time for a data initiative at Fast Change Co. Not just another one like they had in the past, but one that the team Michael collects together needs to fundamentally rethink the approach how Fast Change Co has taken in the past to build data warehouses. And he says his goal is that the new team and the following months, they will develop a data solution. That's the last one that Fast Change Co ever built. Yeah, he sets a really tough goal for the company, for his team. And with that said, they thought about what happens in the past. And so they decided that based on Fast Change Co's experience to date, they need to change something. So they sit together, Michael's team, and they think about, let's start with technology. Let's start with vision and strategy, and let's follow it. So I'll sum up a little bit the strategy and vision they create during their sessions. And they say, okay, one of the most important topics they recognized when they looked back as a team, need to operate as a data management center of excellence, however you name it. It means that they want to bundle and coordinate and implement together wherever possible. So all the use cases which are popping up around at Fast Change Co should be somehow bundled together. The main goal with doing this is to identify and leverage synergies. Yeah. So if you go back the last slide, all the silos were there because everyone creates their own silo in business because they were not fast enough. The second one is that I say we need to design more business-driven. We want to capture the business requirements and do not focus from the beginning on technologies or source systems as the input for our new data warehouse. So that happens also in the past, that all this very enthusiastic people and motivated team members said, okay, we need this technology because that's currently up to date and that's the best for our data warehouse. And during all this, they forgot about the business needs and they built fancy technology stuff, but forgot the business. And they want to change this. Derived from these 2 points, they come up that we as Fast Change Co team need to focus on results. As they say, we need to solve the problems when they arise, not when we as a team suspect they might be there. And with that, they want to involve the business as early on. That was always there in the past, so it's nothing new what they talking about, but they say we need now to write it down as our vision and strategy for the future project. And again, with this business focus, they say as the 4th main topic in our strategy that we need to leverage data models. We want to think data model driven, not to start with a source system, physical data model, but we want to start with the business model and derive from this good information model or business model all our other data models. The reason for that is that good data models not only support knowledge transfer and understanding of the information landscape, but also leads at the end to good data quality in the company. And then they think about how should we work together? And they say, yeah, we need to embrace agile methodologies, but not to say, I want to make stand-ups in the morning or in the evening and have some sprints. Now, the understanding of agile in the team is more that we want to embrace change, what happens every now and then in the data warehousing or in the data field, and to deal with all the uncertainty in the data world. And that's their understanding of embrace agile. So more change the mindset at Fast Change Co. And the 6th and maybe most important topic is from what they learned from the last few data warehouses they implemented. They want to design everything inherently scalable. So that means the solution must work well, regardless of whether they are small or large, and they must be easy to expand over time. So they do not want to create one data solution for the whole company, but they want also to create this kind of thing they can reuse everywhere, also for smaller one, larger one, more real time, or if it's only loaded once a month. That's meant by inherently scalable. With the vision and the strategy created at the end, they call their project now, which derives from the data initiative, the resurrection, the revival of data with meaning. I see there every now and then popping up some questions in the chat. If there's really an important one, then just please ask in between. So because I can't follow the chat, and
I will look at the chat and maybe engage you. So the one question that Jayla raised, which I mean I see it happening, is that the vision and strategy can also create silos. So I'm assuming that this vision and strategy you're referring to is close to the data strategy, aligned to the business strategy. Is that what you see as well?
I didn't understand the question correctly.
Okay, so sometimes there can be all the different departments are creating their own strategy, like cybersecurity and AI and this and that, and we just create many strategies, but we're never focusing on a common goal. I mean, so sometimes, for example, if it was just a warehouse strategy that didn't relate to the overall data strategy, how do you deal with that issue?
Exactly. I mean, the overall, the strategy for the data management center of excellence should be aligned at the end to the overall strategy of the company, if it's governance, security, whatever strategies you have. So in the book, we describe it from the point of view of the data management center of excellence, assuming it is aligned to the overall strategy. And for sure, it might be that one department, which is more focused in security, has a slightly different data solution at the end. But to implement it, to develop the data solution at all, they need at least the data strategy. Because one of the key points here is that the team later on in everything they are doing now, from now on, after writing down the data strategy, is to double check whatever they develop, whatever they design, does it fit to the data, to the strategy and the vision? So if it does not fit, for example, it's not scalable for whatever reason, then they need to skip it and go back to the strategy and think about how to solve it different. So in the business novel, in the book, there's always a guy who is promoting his technology called Speedy.
Right.
And they always say, okay, we need to go back to our vision and strategy. We don't want to talk now about technology. Let's talk about it when we starting implementing it. And that's exactly what is meant here.
Interesting.
So if
we
would have covered,
Marco also made an interesting comment about saying it requires a good information model and knowledge graph to test the alignment. Is that something? I'm not sure if you can comment on that.
We're coming to the information model later on. So on one slide, that's what I really force into it to create information models. Yeah. So after setting up the vision and strategy, they think about how should we start, and they say, again, we need to learn from our past mistakes. We set up as Fast Change Co already 3 data warehouses, and it still does not work anymore. That it's not scalable anymore. And the team analyzes what went wrong in previous project. And I said it already in the previous slide, they focused too much on technology and solely on new technology. They forgot the business. No? And now they say, okay, wait a minute, our strategy is business driven. So we need to think first about what kind of data landscape do we want to use? How should it look like? And they create this first draft of the data landscape. And I think about how should we represent the data domains, the data itself. And I decided to create this kind of marbles here in the picture, where every color is a data domain at Fast Change Co. And this is yet on a very high level. It's more to explain where they want to go, not a final solution to implement it. And that's why they call it a data landscape. And again, all design decisions, they double check in the novel against their vision and strategy and discussing about, does it fit to our vision and strategy, or do we need to do something different? Because that's also learning from the past. Even if they started with a kind of vision or a strategy, they went left or right from the track. So they lost it and falling back into old patterns and habits. And that's why they started to double check, especially at the beginning of the resurrection, more than once, to see, are we still on the track? And with the data landscape, the resurrection is now taking shape. So what you see is that We have here where the data is coming in, so it's a bit unsorted. Then they think about, okay, we need to sort it into different domains together. And if there's data missing, we can add something. So here the yellow's one. And then we can deliver it to the presentation, to different presentation areas, whatever that is at the end. And some apps can consume the data. But I also think in the past there were a lot of need about doing some innovation, doing research with the data, which were already in the data warehouses or in the data solution. But I always had some trouble to deliver it for such purposes. And they also think about how to solve this. And they say, okay, we need some areas where we can do research and where we can add data which is yet not in our data warehouse, for example, the gray data domain or some files out there. Yeah, and then they can create new prototypes, doing research, creating innovation. And that's what they all think about in the sense of a data landscape. At this point, they recognize, but that's not what we need to implement something. That's not, let's say, further developed enough. We need a solution architecture, but one that's still data technology independent or technology agnostic. And if they said they starting digging through the data quadrants from Ronald Damhoff, so there's also one chapter talking about this, what all does this mean? And then they create a different solution architectures for different purposes. They think about what might be if we need some kind of real time and not the big data integration part within. And at the end, they set up a reference architecture. And again, that's important. It's still technology independent. So always looking back on the strategy and vision, and they say, okay, we need to design something which we can later on, like a modeling, like an information model, which we can instantiate for different technologies. Because today, Michael said at the beginning, if you remember, that should be the last data solution they ever built. And so they need to build something which can be instantiated for technologies which even about which we have yet no clue that they will be exist somewhere in future. Yeah. Like 10 years ago, maybe nobody talked about cloud systems which we have today. And in this picture here, you see Xu Fang here. She's one of the characters in the book, and she tries to bring all together: the data landscape, the data quadrant model, and the solution architecture, how this all fits together. Because they struggle about, should they continue with the name of hubs? You see this in the picture, or should they more create names like data quadrants, or should we use the more common terms like layers and areas? And after a while, they figure out, wait a minute, why not keep all these different views on our architecture, solution architecture? Because they recognize if data landscape, we can easily explain it to, let's say, management. With the data quadrant model, we can talk to other departments who are not that deep into data, but then they understand why we need different governance in different quadrants and all these topics. And they said, we keep it all together. And that's what Xu Fang is doing here. She's drawing all in one picture to explain it to different people. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into this picture because that's mostly everything in it, what we are talking about in the book. And so we start in the staging area, and in the solution architecture, they define important steps they have later on in the warehouse, in their data solution. And one of the key points is to keep the data immutable. So again, still not technology. They don't talk yet about where to store the data, but they want to say, once the data is loaded into our data solution, it is immutable. And that happens in the staging layer. In the data landscape, they called it data log data hub, where we store just the data unordered. In architecture, it's then the persistent staging area. And the data is just kept like a database log or whatever log you know. It's just written in. Nothing is changed. And the second point here is that the data is welcome. Like you said in the introduction, everyone is welcome. And that's how we deal with the data here. All data is welcome. We do not judge about it. And we create a space where we do not need to think about, what data type is it, and so on. It should be designed later on that there could not happen any errors at this point. And going further on, going further on from the staging layer where the data is immutable into the integration layer, they developed some fundamental principle for the data logistic processes. We call them modules. And the principles are that each module, each data logistic process needs to be atomic. That means as small as possible, like an insert statement in SQL. All need to be target-centric. So you see the green arrows, they go just downstream into the application, always upwards to the next layer. Forward only, that means we don't go back with the data in stage layer or somewhere else. And most important, each data logistic process needs to be idempotent, deterministic, and independent, because that was not the case in the past data warehouses. So if they executed one load process again, it messed up everything in the target tables. It does not produce the same results even with the same input data. And in most cases, they were never ever independent because something else needs to be run first and then the other can run. And they change it fundamental in the thinking here. And to follow the other principles of the strategy, they also need to be auditable, scalable, and failure tolerant. And last but not least, that was important for the team, inherent bitemporal. So that means every process, every data which is loaded into the integration layer has two timelines finally, one business and one technical timeline. If that all sounds for you complex, it is. And that's the truth. We cannot negotiate to someone else. We need to handle it. And that's what we do in the book for you. Yeah. So you can't get around. Data solutions are here, as Fast Change Co recognized, and they will stay, and they will always be somehow complex due to all the business rules to add data, to maintain data, to improve data. Yeah. And finally, to explain the picture, we have the presentation layer, and they say, okay, there is where we present the data to the consumers, all the integrated data, the well-derived data, and maybe add some more data for special cases. So what we think, Roland and I, in our vision in the book, is that we solve all this complexity as early as possible. If we take bitemporally again as an example, we believe that assigning a technical timeline and a standardized business timeline as early as possible helps at the end to automate the whole data solution, because we have then we have two standard columns which contains the data for the timelines, and then it's easy going on later on. And with the book, you get a lot of links to our Git repository, which is just created for the book. And there are all the templates, examples, sequels, examples, which you can use to follow the storyline in there. And we're extending the Git repository step by step over time. So at this point, there's still no technology built. Yeah? Nothing is technology dependent. And now they came to the point where they say, We have ideas how to get the data in, how to get the data out, how to automate everything. We thought about design patterns, solution patterns, all this stuff. But now let's prove our concept. We want
Dirk,
to.
before you continue, I
Sorry.
see that Howard is asking a question. I'm jumping onto a question as well, but Howard is first.
Yes.
Sorry, Dirk. I
No
should have come
problems.
in a little bit earlier. I wasn't sure that I followed you in terms of your data quadrant model. I understand in looking at your book, it refers to sense making and achieving a common goal, which I think is very important, and I sort of like what you're saying. I'd love to know a little bit more in terms of what is the method that you achieve that sense making, or how do you bring all of this together against the common goal? I understand you've now gone to the solution architectural framework, but I believe you did the quadrant model before the solution model.
I can dive into it a little bit. For example, here in the base integration area, that's data quadrant 1 on, let's say, left side where all the raw data is coming in. So that's very strong governed, for example, because we need to follow processes. There's no options to change data, to do something with the data, except loading it in a very highly orchestrated way. So also from a development point of view, we have a strong development style. Yeah. So also very strong data modeling. And we are not, it's everything well defined in data quadrant 1. Whereas then in the data quadrant 2, in the derived integration area, we add business rules. So we add another truth, which might be department dependent. So we have multiple versions of the truth already, and that's meant in data quadrant 2. We have a looser governance. It's not that strong like in data quadrant 1, for example. Now, the development style is slightly changing, still a strong development style, but we have more options here. And for example, then here in the research area, they called it now sandboxes. That's the data quadrant 4, for example. So we can it's very loose from a development point of view. Yeah, so you can use Python, whatever you want. There's typically no data models available, but they can use data from data quadrant 1, so from the integration area, base integration area, but also add their own data. And as you can imagine, the governance is low at this point because it's research, innovation. Yeah, we don't want to have any governance here anymore. And for example, in the staging area, we could also just land some data like an Excel file, whatever it is, because we are technology independent, and that would be data quadrant 3, where we can do a lot of unsorted data, unordered data, it's sometimes called, and there's no governance, no development style, because I can just add my Excel file, so I don't need to develop anything. And that's the idea behind it, where we bring the stuff together. And what we think is that with the data quadrant model, we can also talk with people which are not that deep into the solution architecture or the data landscape, but we can explain why we have different levels of governance. Why do we apply a strong modeling in data quadrant 1, but no data modeling in data quadrant 4, for example, or less data modeling, and why we use different technologies in different data quadrants. That all can be explained with the data quadrant, maybe to other managers, which sends us some people, or we can explain why do we need different skills in different quadrants. Yeah. I mean, if you would add a creative programmer researcher to the guys who should automate in a strong governance environment and document everything, maybe they do not fit into this data quadrant approach. And the other way around, if you have a data engineer which needs all this guidance and follow this process, it would not be the best idea to put it in an innovation part. Yeah.
And when you use the term sense making, could you give me an example of how you achieve that sense making? How does that come about? How do you enforce that in a strict development flow?
Yeah, exactly. In this context, that we say, okay, people understand, get the sense of what is meant by why do you use data modeling and so on. What I explained. So that's the sense in it. Yeah, that's what we mean with sense making. It's a little bit unprecise, maybe the word sense making. Yeah. So
I'm assuming the data model has to be strict in terms of the glossary, the business terms, the business language, and ensuring that they all adhere to that structure that the business has or information model as Marco is presenting.
Yes. For example, if you take fact-oriented modeling, that's what we refer to, and also in the next slide, that we say, okay, we want to model as precise as possible, to collect everything, and start always with an information model. And if we add business rules, it gets a little bit more unprecise. You add at the end the information to your model, but how the model is created and described might be different to different departments. And there are still high governance says, okay, we as the data management center of excellence needs to create different terms for the different data items. But for example, for the people who consumes it, might be a customer, but internally we have maybe a customer application, current customer, former customer, different definition. So we need to be precise, but in the derived integration area for a specific use case, it might be used different words. So that's where the governance get a bit loosely again.
Okay.
So, because we have different truths out there. Cool.
And I know Remco had his hand up, but it's down. Remco, was your question answered?
No, absolutely not, because but that's okay. I know how it works, but I just want to be sure. I know Dirk and his timelines, and I'm very happy that you say, hey, we need to have at least 2 timelines, right? The more technical one and the business perspective one. But just to be very sure, all the other timelines you just see as context, right? Because we need to have that information as well. For instance, the start date of a contract, end date of a contract, change date, or on onboarding dates. Those timelines you will include as well, just as being, hey, this is just information we need to show anyway.
That's a super interesting question. Howard, we need to set up a second session for this topic.
All right.
I already get my aspirin for it then.
Yeah. Now, what we make, what is our approach with the 2 timelines is not to go crazy with tons of timelines. The first thing is you need to think, is my timestamp really a timeline or is it an event date? So most of the dates you mentioned currently are event dates. Just like in the office, someone gives you a paper and someone needs a stamp on it, a timestamp. That's the point where this happens. And it will never, ever change. So that's more like a real timestamp. If really history is changing, then we talk about the business timeline, when something happens in reality. And that a good example for this is price calculation. So we think now that the price for the blue jeans will be $100 in one week. But something happens, then we need to extend it to $110. Now we might sell a lot. Maybe the buying department says, okay, we can go down $20 because we get it now cheaper. Then it will change again. And that's something, what this kind of business timeline, what happens in reality. And how we solve this is that we say, okay, let's pick from our immutable data, one data item, which is in our terms, the state timeline, the business timeline, and add it to the standard column state timeline, state timestamps, but keep it still as an additional context column there. And that's important for later for all the automation patterns, because then in the presentation layer, star schema is easily created because the automation templates knows, okay, there's a state timeline. It always has the same names. And I use this. And if you change your opinion for some reason that this is not the best one, you change it in the mappings from the immutable data set to the data vault again. Yeah, and just, okay, I changed my mind. Let's take this one, reload the data, and you have exactly the same technical historization as before, but a different timeline for your use cases. That's the short answer. But that's also a good presentation.
I know there's way more to say, but I agree with you, Dirk. Maybe Howard, if you want to host a timely discussion on times,
I will do that. I've seen some of your passion around the temporal situations.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. So they finished now their different data solution architectures, and they selected one reference architecture, which they want to use now for their MVP, because they want to prove all their concepts and assumptions they made how the data solution should work. And they started again back to the strategy with an information model, because some of the guys already want to start with the technology again, with Speedy, but then I said, no, wait a second. We said we need to start with an information model. And that's a little bit abstracted FCOM data model. If you want to know more about it, ask Marco. He's in the chat, in the audience.
He's told us a lot. He's shared a few times with us.
Exactly. And that's what also Fast Change Co., the team, selected as their state-of-the-art information model. And what happens now with the automation, with the ancient thinking, is that they do not create handcrafted data vault models anymore, but they derive all the metadata from the information model to the engine, the metadata, and the engine itself create the data vault model, create then the loading patterns, the modules, and everything is more or less set up. So the task they are doing now, they start creating the information model. Here on the right-hand side, you see Philomena. She's from the business side, more subject matter experts. And then they start mapping the source systems they found to the information model. In the MVP, for sure, they did not develop everything till the end because it's an MVP and not the full delivered project. But they recognized already, okay, wait a minute, we can, with some easygoing scripts, we can extract all the metadata we need from the information model, including the mapping from the source to the information model. And from this ongoing, we can create with our solution patterns everything we want. The DDLs, the modules to load the data in the system. And that's exactly what they want to achieve. And they made some tests, solved it, what went wrong modeling, some wrong assumption, and they just started to try out how to reload the data, throw the integration layer model away, and just reload everything again. And they recognized with the MVP, and that's what I assumed on the way to this point, that the design metadata, that's how we call the metadata which is derived from the data models, is the real treasure for Fast Change Co. That's the IP they created with data modeling for the data solution. And they say, okay, now we understand the issue because the technology is coming and going. And if we implement everything directly into the technology, also our IP is lost if the technology goes. And now we have everything in an information model, and that's independent from people's, from technologies, because the metadata in the data model remains. And so they recognized, okay, like a physical model can be instantiated from the information model, they can also derive or instantiate the data solution with their metadata, with the design metadata for every technology which will come around the corner in future. And with this successful MVP, they say, okay, the resurrection is now the foundation of the future at Fast Change Co. And I asked you at the beginning, or the fast change course itself, fast change core asks itself that, or if fast change core will ever succeed in building a data solution that adapts to change, one that solves and controls data problems within their company, and one that's fully automatable. And yes, with the MEP in place, they say we reached the milestone, we have succeeded, we've created the foundation that we can do all this. We have proven our vision and strategy from the beginning. And now they say that the resurrection should be and will be the last data solution they ever build. So that's the whole story of the book I showed you now. And I said,
Thank you.
yeah, that's awesome what's going on here. And now some advertising for the book. Yeah, Roland and I have
Great.
combined our each 25 years into the book. So we are all 25 years in the business, in the data business. I started back in 2000 at SUSE Linux. I got in touch with DB2 and figured out, oh, data warehousing, that's exactly what I want to do. And we've collected a lot of experience, what does not work, what is working, and in this comprehensive approach to create a truly flexible, scalable and robust data solution, we created a data engine thinking book. And
Thank you.
Yeah, so just scan the QR code and buy the book if you haven't yet.
So I'm sure they can scan it, and then hopefully we'll have a lucky person who wins the copy of the book. That would be great. So maybe we can just open the floor to some questions. Normally when Remco's camera video comes on, then he has a question.
No, that's I do only have a remark. I think having a 700-page book, calling it comprehensive, it is a big one, right? It's including everything, but it's definitely not a small one. By the way, I'm out of the whole. I already ordered my copy. I know I got number 16, right?
Yeah,
I would expect to get 42, Dirk, but then again,
that was already away. So to bring the audience on the same page where Remco is, so he's talking about the limited edition. So we have different editions created. We have the ebook versions out, currently only on Amazon. We have the soft cover out, which is also only available on Amazon. But if you go on our website, dataenginethinking.com, and go to orders, then you have also the options to reserve your limited edition, which is a special hardcover edition, which will only be available in 404 copies. And there are some other things included, like Xufan's notebook, a bag where you can put all the stuff in you want to, and some other topics. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. So let me ask the floor, or anyone in the audience, are there any other questions for Dirk? Anything that you haven't asked up until now, haven't thought about? Dirk, I had a question earlier on about your the data landscape, and I see it's. How close does that resemble the subject area model or the enterprise data model in terms of, and I know a data warehouse has to be subject oriented, but when you presented the landscape, it was a little bit more dealing with the flow and the movement of data.
The data landscape is not meant as a kind of data model. It's more to explain how the data comes into the new data solution, how it's then sorted. Maybe we need to add some data, and what you can do with it. Because that was also something in the past. Nobody could explain what happens in a data warehouse. So yeah, everybody could say, yeah, we get the data in, we do something with it, we integrate it, historize all these terms we are used to in the data world of data or data warehousing. But how do you explain this to people who are far away? Maybe some sponsors, maybe some others, and they figured out, okay, the data landscape is technology independent, and we can easily explain it, for example, to a controlling department. What happens there? Why do we need to do all these topics? And at this early stage, they also, as I said, they thought about, did we forgot something? And they added, for example, the innovation part and research part, because that was always forgotten in the past. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I like that idea of allowing people to almost like a sandbox or an innovation or research area that they can play and then have access to. William, yes. Question from you, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Dirk. So yeah, happy with the logic and happy with the thinking around trying to get something for business to actually grasp what we're talking about, right? So that makes sense to me. The concept out of data lakehouse, how do you bring that into this conversation? Because that's such a buzzword at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's why the technology is coming really at the end. So if you have everything brought together, you can decide, for example, you want to create, I don't use now the term data lakehouse because it's slightly defined different by different vendors or whatever you're talking about. So for example, you can create your own data lake as a staging area, or you could even put your immutable data log on a file, yeah, like whatever you want to do. It's not needed to be in a relational database. And that's also what we experienced in the past, that every one of us is biased somehow by a kind of technology, and we need to get rid first of it when we think about all the solutions out there. And then you can maybe decide in the integration layer, for the base integration layer where we need this strong governance and development style, there we go with a relational database. But then on the other hand, maybe you want to add, let's say, a key value pair database because you need to add some sensor data, which is coming 1,000 items per second. Then it's not feasible to do this with a relational database or a file. Maybe you want to add JSON files to your system. Yeah, then we want to go with a document database, or you want to add a graph database or a temporal graph document database. Whatever your use case is, the thinking of the data engine is not limited to only one technology at the end. On the other hand, we want to encourage you as a data solution nowadays, take after you know what you want to deliver for your business and think about a vision strategy. We are business driven. Yeah, we focus on results. We want to use the technology which fits best to the needs at the end. We don't want to use just one big database like Speedy here in the book. We want to provide the best solution. And this also might be that even if we say we want to go virtualized in the presentation area, it might be that for some use case, you need a high-speed columnar in-memory database for whatever reason. Yeah, and that's why we say, okay, it doesn't matter which technology you use. If you, for example, if your company says, hey, we are Microsoft super duper customer, we need to use everywhere. So Microsoft, yeah, go for it. If you want to go with Databricks, Snowflake, whatever, Oracle, go for it. The solution
base logic is the same.
Exactly. Yeah. And you just generate different loading patterns, different DDLs, different maybe file structures, yeah, for the technology you are using. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dirk. Howard, I think we're going to cover this again, but in a different angle when we have a discussion on my one. Okay. Because it's also agnostic, right? Yeah. Good. Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Simone?
Yes, thanks. Hi, Dirk.
Hi.
when I go to our customers, there are every now and then voices that ask me, okay, if I use AI of today, why do I even need a data warehouse? Of course, I explain to them differences and so on, but how do you think all this AI and the data that is used there and actually comes out of it as well is going to melt, grow together and support such a data engine?
A super good question. So the reality catched up with our vision in the book a little bit, because exactly the point of the engine in the middle, we described that the engine at the end decides, for example, what is the best physical implementation. Yeah? You provide some different technologies, for example, or the engine decides, is a third normal form in this case better than a data vault, better than one flat table, better than whatever. And that's all collected by environmental metadata. Yeah, like how many memory is available, what technology do I use, do I have more requests on this data item than another data item? And then there might be a split of a satellite in the case of data vault. And there, for sure, all this AI helps a lot, yeah, to support the decision of the engine at the end. If a data solution is in a company still required or not, or let's say a data warehouse still required or not, that's a question I would try to answer from a different point of view. I would ask them, if they question a data warehouse, I would ask, what are your business requirements? What do you want to achieve? So if they say, I just want to have a PDF report, then I say, yeah, maybe you don't need a data warehouse report because you can create it from your operation system if that's possible. Absolutely with you. If you don't have requirements for data warehouse, you don't need it. But which company who really wants to be in a competitive environment can afford not having it? Yeah. There might be use cases where you don't need it, where you're okay with just just in hyphens, if any large language model, which might be fine. But if it comes to numbers, calculating, estimating, making a complete business calculation, like don't know the English word right now. In German, we call it Deckungsbeitragsrechnung. So once I built up a data warehouse, they had 2,000 measures calculated to sum up at different levels if a product is on profit or not. And sometimes it turns out a product which was at the first glance very profitable until you add all the costs till the end, like returns and everything. It showed that, wow, that's definitely not worth to keep it in further on. Yeah. And that sometimes you have a lot of surprises in doing this kind of calculation. And that's where all the AI is not very strong doing this. So that we learned on the global data summit in one talk.
Totally with you. It was just really funny. I had a CTO who was saying, I will just throw all the data sources in AI and then I get my Deckungsbeitrag.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure how this should work, but what I think that in some technologies, AI will be integrated. Sometimes, like in Snowflake, what they are already doing, or SQL Server, it's integrated, or in Ktalk. Sometimes it feels for me, and I'm not sure if that's really will happen, but we had the same situation with Hadoop 10 years, 15 years ago. Everyone said Hadoop will replace data warehouses. What happened? Hadoop is integrated in the technology stacks for data warehouses. So it completely turned the other way around from my point of view. Maybe something similar happens with all the AI, that it will be more like an interface, more like integrated, so that it's not visible anymore like we have now. You need to go to Claude or Mistral and then chat and then go back and do your task. It will be more somehow everywhere. Yeah, like you go to your database or to your dashboard and type something in, that you get more like an interface, more interactive, maybe even with language. I have no idea where we will end up. It's an interesting time currently because we are at the beginning of something which will change a lot. But I believe that it does not change the need for data solutions.
Yeah.
Because the
I'm
complexity
totally-
needs to be solved somewhere. Yeah. And if and how a single large language model could solve this, no idea. Because you need the data models, you need to figure out how the data is connected to each other. You need to know all these topics, and even some AI needs to know this. And we had this last year at a data modeling zone in Phoenix, not this year, the year before. We talked in one session about, will AI replace data modeling? And it turns out, no, we need data modeling that AI can give good answers at the end.
Mm.
So that's the way how it turns out. Yeah.
And
Also
also, you're
think-
referring
Long
to
answer.
you're referring to the Global Data Summit, Dirk, and I think one of the very most important thing over there, which also in the European AI Act, and even I think in the ones in the US, is human in the loop, right? So for everything we're doing, I have my own data modeling assistant and other kind of fun stuff, and there are more. But basically, the most important ones, at least the ones helping out, are having the human in the loop. It gives you information. This is what Marco's doing, right? It gives you some kind of direction as a data modeler and questions to be asked. And I think that's where AI will be perfectly fine from a modeling perspective.
Mhm.
And the better the data model, the better the business case we can get, the better the assistant's going to be.
Yeah. And I think, Marco, you painted a good comic about it, that the requirements still need to be solved. Or you just reposted one. I can't remember. At the end, the business requirements still there. They need to be solved. They need to be analyzed, and that's the hard part, as always. So
I think you're
Working
referring
together.
to the cartoon where even after thousands of years, the tools still need humans to work.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Human in the loop.
Mm.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hope I could answer your question. Yeah. By the way,
Great.
the QR code you see, that's to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah.
Any more questions? Any other questions for Dirk before we find out who the lucky winner is? Tariq, is there something from you?
Hi, Howard. Good
Hi,
evening.
Tariq.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I joined very late today, so I don't have question as of now, but I'm very much interested to hear the recording of this.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. I
Thank you.
think it will help you certainly in the area that you're in.
This topic is very, very interesting for me. Unfortunately I missed it, but this
Okay.
data engineering solution, this is very, very interesting and close to me.
Thank you very much.
So I will go through the recording. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Dirk, thank you very much, sir. Last question. Is there a question or something that got you to think about, think you a little bit harder about what was happening, and which question would that be?
Oh, there were so many good questions, and
So
it's
maybe
hard
you
to
can
decide.
you could probably take Remco and I out of the equation because he's got a book and I shouldn't get one of those books. So I think we maybe have 2 or 3 other questions left.